Hello, dear friends. Here we are again for another conversation about the Spiritist magazine. It's always a pleasure to be here on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And today we'll be talking about a most important topic brought to us by the Spirit André Luiz through the mediumship of Francisco Cândido Xavier in the book Evolution into Worlds that is now currently available for purchase in the English language. We also are going to recommend that you visit the spiritismagazine.org to download this issue is issue 44, and that you can also visit our playlists where the studies of each chapter of the book Evolution into Worlds is done by three hosts, myself, Vanessa Saloni, and Marco Magalhães, and we have that available for you to go and refresh the knowledge in this most beautiful book. André Luiz, as you know, is a physician, or was a physician while he was incarnated on the earth. And he brings to us in this article, in this chapter from the book Evolution into Worlds, the mechanisms of how microbial invasions happen when we are in the physical body. And of course, this is it's a long article, and we will be able to discuss some of it with you. It's the most beautiful issue of the Spiritist magazine that we always recommend that everyone download. And this is what the cover looks like. It's issue 44, published in January of 2019. The beauty of the Spiritist doctrine is that, as we spoke last week about the Spiritist book bring us teachings for today, tomorrow, and eternity. So the mechanisms that André Luiz will bring to us in this chapter will be useful to you and I as we undergo our lifetimes on the earth and our ability to develop mechanisms to fight in diseases. And of course, all under the umbrella of our reincarnatory plans, the will of God, and the support of divine providence. And if you were to visit spiritismagazine.org and you would download the PDF of this article into your computer, you would find this most beautiful publication where you have the different articles of the Spiritist magazine. You scroll down to this one, which is titled Microbial Invasion. Is microbial invasion linked to spiritual causes? It's an interesting conversation to think about what causes diseases. Are the agents of the physical and spiritual realms linked? Is our physical composition affected in any way by the way our minds and emotional life is? We will see. This is the article that we have here to discuss. So I'm going to highlight some points for us to discuss because it's a long article and we might not necessarily read line by line. And that's not the goal of our studies anyways. The goal of our studies is for you and I to bring to light the importance of studying the Spiritist magazine. It's always a teaser for you to go read and make your own conclusions about the topic. So André Luiz will start this article by saying, remember the question, the second part of let me bring myself up here a little bit. The book Evolution into Worlds is structured in two different parts. There's part one, part two, and each part has 20 chapters. In the second part of the book, where this chapter is, it's a question and answers format. So the first part is very scientifically based, very detailed in the mechanisms of our evolution as time goes by in both realms of life. And when we have the opportunity there to link physics, biology, genomics, and the evolution of the spiritual principle throughout the different internships of in matter, and the further evolution and also in the spirit world. So that's a mechanistic, if you will, part of the book. That's my interpretation of it. And then the second part is more of a questions and answers. So there you're going to find things such as, do spirits have social lives, and how are things affected, and talks about relationships. In this case, the question, remember, was, let's go back to the question, is a microbial invasion linked to spiritual causes? And this is the answer from Luiz. Except in cases of infectious diseases that happen due to the absence of common hygiene, the depressions created in us by our own selves, due to the abuse of our forces, either through adulterating the vital changes of the organic cosmos by surrendering to imbalance, or through establishing disturbances when harming others. So those actions form in the physio-psychosomatic tissues that constitute the vehicle of our expression, the perispirit, certain fields of rupture in the cellular harmony. A lot of things for us to think about. So think about a time when you were in the spiritual realm, planning to return to the earth, and you had your spirit surrounded by your perispiritual body. That's your perispiritual body is composed of physio, for physiology, psycho for the mind, somatic is for the part of the matter of your cells, tissues. So when you and I abuse of our vital forces, and how do we do that? We adulterate adulterating the vital changes by surrendering to imbalance. So we become imbalanced. We become out of balance with the vibratory goodness of the universe, or through establishing disturbances when we harm others. And rest assured, at some point in our lives, we had this surrendering to imbalance. When we get desperate, when we get fearful, when we are unable to control and educate our emotions, or when we harm others. And even if we, in this lifetime, hopefully we haven't harmed as many others, it's possible and likely that in other lives we have harmed others. So at some point we may cause these depressions in our perispiritual tissues. And when those disturbances reach the physio-psychosomatic tissues that compose our perispirit, now we have a disruption in the cellular harmony of those tissues. And then when dysfunction appears, the entire area is affected by maladjustments, becomes susceptible to microbial invasion, as is an area that is unguarded. And our cells in both realms are guarded by who? The natural sentinels that do not have the basis necessary for their regenerating action of responsibility, thus often remaining around the damaged site, seeking to restrict their presence to quell their expansion. This is, for example, how your immune system works. There are natural sentinels that circulate throughout our bodies that allows for this constant surveillance. And you and I have developed that constant surveillance, these natural sentinels, that will scan our bodies for what's ours and for what's others. And then when we have that cellular disharmony or the rupture on the cellular harmony, the natural sentinels are unable to perform their function. Thus, balance and the lack of harm brings us harmony, and surrendering to imbalance and causing harm in others due to our mental states, as we're going to see later, causes us to have cellular disharmony. In other words, why I'm spending so much time with all this technical knowledge is for you to realize that even if we don't know, if we're not consciously aware that this is happening in our body, our mind, the mind of our spirit, is commanding the actions of the perispiritual body, which in turn command the actions of our physical bodies. And when we find ourselves in the midst of fear, in the midst of anger, resentment, guilt, shame, we are causing these areas that are damaged. These vibrational areas are damaged. And then it's going to talk about how that causes the synergistic work of the cells and the tissues to be disrupted, and then morbid unit appears. And here he's going to give you the example of cancer units, but that is true from all the other units in the body. So when you think about yourself as a spirit radiating energetically, that radiation of your mind, of your thoughts from your thoughtless life, affecting the perispiritual body and then affecting your physical body, you can feel like if you have an area of disturbance, that vibrational pattern is disrupted. The synergistic work of the cells. When you and I look at our cells, even if you're not a biologically inclined or medically inclined person, know that you are composed of cells which by themselves are composed of atoms who form molecules. Excuse me. Form molecules, and molecules form all the activities of your cell, including enzymatic activities, DNA replication, correction, protein formation, so on and so forth. All the things that we do in terms of sensing the environment, responding to the environment, cleaning up waste, feeding ourselves do as well. That's the definition of a cell. And then our cells aggregate, depending on their type, into tissues. Tissues, by their turn, aggregate to form organs. Organs together form systems, a circulatory system, the immune system, nervous system. And those cells need to work synergistically. They need to work together in order to maintain the form and the function of those organs in our lives. So when we have those disturbances, remember they were caused by our own actions, by surrendering to imbalance and or harming others. Now we have areas of disturbance, and the cellular harmony is disrupted. Then in the physical body, our cells are unable to perform their functions, therefore we may get to be sick. So he's going to talk about this part about tumors and how the vibrational pattern can go around this spread, and is able to cause harm to the person. So I'm going to encourage you to go and read that little piece, and he will say here, due to the secondary state, disease emerges in the midst of extensive processes of attrition or devastation due to disharmony that compels the organic plant to be exhausted and to be depleted. In vain, the enormous task of rehabilitation in the carnal plane, when the patient, without humility, patient in the spirit of service and devotion to the good, cannot assimilate the beneficent currents of divine love that circulate incessant around all creatures through different and innumerable agents, and stimulating to the maximum benefit of existence on the earth. So this is talking about someone who is unable to surrender, is unable to maintain the balance of their own minds, which in turn can be manifested in disharmony of the cells, that in turn can cause disease. And this harmony may exist, and then now we will undergo through, in this case, a cancer or another chronic disease or acute disease, or even in the case of we're living right now, a microbial invasion of our bodies that causes us to become sick, need the resources of the physical realm of medicine, and or our responsibility of not getting sick so that we don't make others sick. So when we are undergoing this process of disharmony or dis-ease, we need to think about it. Am I going through this Okay, I'm in the state. I was unable to stop that from forming because of many reasons, including the things we have to experience in order to be redeem, redress, learn, so on and so forth. But when I find myself in this task of rehabilitation of my physical body, am I going um, through this experience without humility, patience, and spirit of service? Because we can still be sick and still be humble, still be patient, still serve others. And in most simple, especially devotion to the good. Because if I don't have those aspects, and Andrea Luiz will say, the patient will not be able to assimilate the currents of divine love. So go to the book Genesis by Allan Kardec, and you're going to find the divine providence provides all of the resources that you and I need for this existence and from all of the other existence we've had and the existence we'll have in the future. So when we are in this harmony, when we're going to go through rehabilitation of the carnal vessel without humility, patience, and spirit of service, we are unable to assimilate this current of love that could potentially help us to stimulate our physiopsychosomatic tissues and physical bodies to restore our health. Are we all going to be healthy 100% of the time if we're humble, patient, and have spirit of service and devotion to the good? Perhaps. However, we remember we are all on the earth in a moment. We are all on the earth for the experience. We're experiencing a planet of trials and expiations. Therefore, we have things we have done in the past we need to redress, and perhaps a physical illness is a way for you and I to learn. And that's why when we find ourselves in this position, whatever the disease is, we need to see that if I'm humble, if I'm patient, if I'm serving, and if I have devotion to the good, I will be able to open myself to these currents of divine love that you see here. So envision yourself around, because these currents of divine, beneficent currents of divine love circulate incessant around all creatures. All creatures. To stimulate what? The maximum benefit of existence on the earth. So we have the ability to change our mental state so that our humility, patience, and spirit of service can help us tap into the resources of the good. And he will say here, however, when the patient adopts a favorable behavior to him or herself, the sympathy that instills in the neighbor, the physical forces find solid support in the radiations of solidarity and recognition that absorbs from those who collect the direct or indirect help, being able to circumscribe the dysfunction to the benign neoplasm, which will respond to the organizing influence of the adjacent tissue. So he's still talking about the mechanisms of forming neoplasms, which are tumors. So when we have this more favorable behavior of humbleness, spirit of service, devotion to the good, and patience, we can tap into the resources of love. And then when we are serving others, there is this radiations of solidarity and recognition that we can not only emit to others, but we can absorb from others. And that's the invitation for today, is for us to see ourselves as undergoing any difficulties in the physical health mindset so that we can radiate the spirit of solidarity and also of love around all beings. Keep in mind, I'm scrolling through the PDF that you can download if you visit spiritistmagazine.org. Then he will now describe a similar system for illnesses, including tuberculosis, leprosy, brucellosis, and amoebiasis, bacterial endocarditis, and Chagas heart disease, as well as many others. Those are diseases caused by microbes. At this time, he's describing those. He says in general, we can say that almost all of them as a secondary phenomena over the zones of unhealthy predispositions that we form in our own body due to the imbalance of our mental forces that regenerate ruptures or solutions of continuity in the points of interaction between the spiritual body and the physical plane, wherein the microbial assault is insinuated, to which we are more particular inclined by the nature of our karmic accounts. So the predispositions you and I have to diseases are formed by our own cells, are formed in our own body due to the imbalance of our mental forces. So the warning and the recommendation of the good spirits when they write things like this to us is so that when I'm balanced, when I'm humble, when I pray, when I commit to service and I devote myself to the good, I can balance my mental force so that I don't generate ruptures, but I generate solutions of continuity. Because there are points of interaction, as you know, go to the Spirit's book, you're going to find that your spirit developed and connected to your perispirit, and the perispiritual body is semi-matter that is connected to your physical body. So through the mental imbalance, you can create these ruptures that ultimately will affect the points of interactions between your spiritual body and the physical vehicle. So we are in charge of creating a healthier connection between our perispirit and our physical body that ultimately could help us to avoid these diseases. Again, this is not deterministic. It depends on our reincarnatory plan, in our commitment to the good, the things we have to experience, and ultimately we grow, we are born, we need to grow, we become old, and then we have the physical body is going to perish of some sort of um, illness, ailment, or just going to break down because of age. So that does not mean that if you're humble, patient, and devotion to the good, you're not going to experience diseases. What the important part of here is the imbalance of our mental forces. So we know that we can be imbalanced so that we work on balancing those mental forces, because it all start on the mind. It says here, once the attack, remember the microbes that he mentioned before, has been consolidated due to our vulnerability, symptomatic or asymptomatic illnesses appear. Because sometimes we're sick and we don't show any symptoms. Let's see if I can make it a little tiny, a little bigger. Okay, there you go. Stabilizing or radiating according to the dispositions of the mind itself. So we in our minds can control that, even though if we don't know we can control that, we should consider the possibility. And that comes with self-knowledge, with prayer, meditation, and so on and so forth. Then the mind either work or not to redo the organic defense in a supreme effort of readjustment. So when we fall into this ease or disharmony, and the attack of the microbes are established, we may or may not um, show the signs and symptoms of a disease. Then in our minds, we can work to readjust, to redo the organic defenses in order to readjust our mental forces again. By automatism, according to the position in which the principle of cause and effect is found, the mind either admits or refuses the intrusion of these or that pathogenic factor destined to expunge in suffering form the residues of evil according to the suffering implanted in the life or body of our neighbors. So ultimately, if you go back to the book Evolution into Worlds, and I know it's a big ask to do because it's a complex book, and that's why there is a whole study of the entire book here at Kardec Radio. So we are thinking about using our mental forces, our mental readjustment in order to diminish or enhance our natural defenses, therefore either becoming having an illness established or having an illness be resolved. And then when we see ourselves as the agents of our thoughts, of our feelings, of our words, of our actions, then we can work as an agent of our own readjustment. So it's all about the mind can work or not to reduce the organic defense. And then by automatism, he means think about you're sitting here right there with me. You have trillions of cells in your body, plus all the microbes that live in our skin and our gastrointestinal system. They're all in symbiosis and working together. You're not thinking about the cell that grows my little finger nail here, grow, or um, activate this enzyme, turn off that enzyme, or you're not thinking about now cells of my atrial node discharge electrical signal that will travel for the heart and then beat atrium, contract atrium, relaxed ventricle, pump out, go to. You're not thinking of any of that. You might be thinking of it now that I mentioned, but you're not necessarily telling your body consciously how to beat the heart or breathing. You can control your breathing if you put a mind to it. But a lot of the automation occurs because we had these experiences in different realms, in different kingdoms of life, where we learn to do those things in an automated fashion. So our cells are doing DNA repair, DNA copies, it's fixing its problems, it's getting nutrients, it's going through enzymatic reactions, it's excreting, they are dividing, because believe it or not, the body that you have today is not the same the cells that you had when you were born, or even the cells you had 5 years ago. So you're constantly in renewal, and we are doing all those things by automatic forces. So think about your mind, your spirit. What are you thinking? What are you doing? How humble and patient we are, how committed to the good and service we are, and then that can help rebalance our mental forces that then what affect the perispiritual tissues that then connected to the physical can either aid or hinder the healing from diseases or the experience of disease and illnesses. And then the beautiful part of here is, and that's what I'm going to end with, is it says we cannot forget the constant good generates constant good. That's the challenge for today, is to say once we maintain a ceaseless movement in the good, all the evil that is piled up by us is gradually attenuated, disappearing to the impact of the vibrations of aid born to our favor. In all of those whom we direct the message of pure love and understanding, without the express necessity of resorting to the help of disease to eliminate the remains of darkness that may eventually be incorporated in our mental background. So when we do good, when we commit to the good, we help others. And then the vibrations of aid that we emanated and then we actualize in our lives, meaning someone is thirsty, I give them water, someone is hungry, I give them food, someone needs shelter, I shelter them, we help them, we give a word of, we pray for them, we give them a word of consolation and hope. The vibrations of aid that you extended ultimately can come to you, they will be born in our favor in those who will direct the message of pure love and understanding. I'll give you a practical example to translate. I know this is becoming very technical, but it's important that we understand that we have all this in the Spiritist magazine. We have the messages, the prayers, the knowledge, and the nuances of how our true life is. The interaction between the two realms, how you and I are growing as we develop as spirits throughout millennia. When André Luiz describes on his book, No Solar, if you go back to No Solar and read, you will see that he was a physician in a previous life that he describes on this book. And then he was, as a physician, merited with the blessing and the privilege of taking care of others. But he was also not taking care of everyone the same. He was favoring the people who could pay more than the people who have less financial means. So he did pro bono work. I mean, he did work for the poor. He didn't charge for. And then he describes in the book on how from all of those he helped, a certain amount were so thankful to him that they when they learned that he had passed, and they were so thankful that he was able to the physician was able to help them with their ailments, that they were able to pray for him in such a loving and caring way that those vibrations of aid born in them reached him when he was suffering in the lower zones, that would ease a little bit of the suffering. So when we feel helped, don't we feel this loving vibration emanating from us towards those who um, rendered aid? Don't we feel so consoled and helped? Let's say you're in a hospital and you're not able to receive visits because maybe your family members live far away, maybe you're estranged, maybe they've passed. And then when that nurse and that therapist extends a hand to you, you feel so thankful that you felt heard. And then you may pray for them later. And that's what he's talking about. When we are engaged in constant good, it generates constant good. When our mental forces are used in order for us to align in the spirit of service and goodness, then we have this solidarity around us. And ultimately, that support and helping others creates protection for ourselves, which is why the principles of Jesus, banishing us from animality and pride, vanity and greed, cruelty and avarice, and exhorting us to simplicity and humility, to fraternity without limits, and to unconditional forgiveness, establish, when observed, the perfect immunology in our inner life, strengthening the power of the mind in self defense against all destructive and degrading elements that surround us, and articulating our possibilities essential to the evolution towards God. So I hope this was a helpful way for you to think and be curious about the explanation he gives in terms of how microbes can get a hold of our physical vehicle, and how the power of your mind, the power of my mind, can help us to strengthen this immunology in our lives so that our natural defenses can kick in, and perhaps these vibrations of aid and love and solidarity, we can remember, choose to engage in the good, choose to give of ourselves to help others, and then who is going to be around us? Your mentor and guide. She will come and give you instructions and inspire you. The mentors and guides of those who you help can be around you, and you can feel these loving vibrations of light and feel their love for you because you've extended the hand to their people. And you can feel the love and kindness of someone who is so thankful that you took the time to help them. So those vibrations of aid and love, and so that when we commit to service and to goodness, we can feel and assimilate the beneficent currents of divine love that circulate incessant all creatures. So that's my wish for you and I today. I wish that we can meditate on how we are using the power of our minds in order to co-create goodness everywhere we go, so that you can visualize yourself immersed in God's love, divine providences, ultimate beneficent currents of divine love all around us, all creatures, the ones you love, the ones you still yet to love, the ones we see as enemies, the ones who have hurt us, the ones we've hurt. We are all swimming in this ocean of love. It's like fish in the ocean. The divine love is everywhere, abundant and abound. And why? While we think about our mental balance, our mental imbalance, how I'm doing in order to reevaluate my emotions, my ideas, how can I improve, how can I be my emotional intelligence, do I need help? All of that will bring a net positive effect so that you and I can feel, not only feel the beneficent currents of divine law, but we can assimilate them, can allow them to circulate throughout our body incessantly. And then can visualize ourselves as co-creators in goodness, as Andrea Luiz will say to you and I in the beginning of the book, Evolution into Worlds, by Andrea Luiz is the beginning of the book. So here we have, I want to put this in here so that you know, and I'll find the playlist and I will make that link available to you and I as well. This is from the book Evolution into Worlds. The mediums are Chico, Xavier, and Waldo Vieira. It's a little too big. The translation is by the Kardec Radio's team, and there is a study session by Drs. Vanessa Celoni, myself, and Dr. Marco Magalhães at Kardec Radio YouTube channel. So you can go through the entire 40, I think it's 41 with the preface, 41 study sessions where we delve into details in each one of these books. Therefore, dear friends, I hope and wish for you a most peaceful night in reflection and connection with this infinite divine love that surrounds all of us. So if you were to join me next week, I will be most honored. Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Remember, stay tuned. After this program, we have the Divine Laws with Dr. Carol Correa, and she is the most wonderful way of you learning about divine laws as we work towards balancing our mental forces, aligning our mental forces with the laws of God. So watch her program and all of the other programs at Kardec Radio. And until next week, take care of yourself. Take care of someone you love if you can. Align yourself with the good spirits through prayer, and I'll see you next week. Have a great night.